Let's move to the final topic, because someone who is climbing up the mid-table is a man who we all thought would no longer be in charge at this point. That's Gerardo Seoane and Gladbach. They beat St. Pauli 2-0 and are now sixth in the Bundesliga standings. I don't think many people had that on their bingo cards. They're just 2 points behind Borussia Dortmund, 3 points behind Leverkusen, and 4 points behind Leipzig. That is outstanding. This is really outstanding, given the start to the season that they had. I thought their match against St. Pauli was brilliant. Tim Kleindienst stands out to me. Player scores as well. Should have scored 2. I mean, the one where he breaks through, beats the goalkeeper. I don't know why he just doesn't hammer it in rather than trying to slide it across the line, right? And it gets intercepted. But this Gladbach side, I kind of want to say out of nowhere, has really been good lately. And there's some protagonists in there that make this maybe a little bit less surprising. I mean, Tim Kleindienst is one that we have highlighted many times. You've written a newsletter already about him this season. He's now it looks like he's Germany's go-to number 9 in the attack, at least as long as Niklas Füllkrug is out, and probably beyond that, because what he has and what Füllkrug lacks, he's very much more of a team player and still has that physical presence in the attack. He just seems like a very typical Julian Nagelsmann player in so many ways, right? Because he's intelligent. He makes these really intelligent runs, and he has the ability to really read the space fantastically well. So he is a physical presence, but also can play with the players around him, which makes him a great player to play with the likes of Reitz, Musiala, Havertz, etc. It's amazing that he discovered that it took until 29 until he was more or less discovered. But he is having a tremendous season, and I think his pickup by Gladbach is probably fueling this. But he's not the only one. I mean, you look at someone like Rocco Reitz, right, who's a player who we think is going to be sooner or later knocking on that national team door as well. Then there's Hack, the young Ullrich who played out left, only 20 years old, Lukas Ullrich, right? There's so much hidden talent in this team, and Seoane, after a really, really bumpy start, is really getting the most out of this team now, and it's just fascinating to watch. And I think this Gladbach story is one that, who knows where it's going to end.
Yeah, absolutely. We're now looking at a team who, over the course of the last 5 match days, have picked up more points than any Bundesliga team except Bayern Munich. So that really kind of underlines just the incredible run of form they've had. I think the thing that we probably have to bear in mind about Gladbach is, and look, this is a really, really easy thing to say in hindsight, but I remember at the start of the season, we were kind of talking about Gladbach a lot, and that Leverkusen game, and it's literally the first game of the season where they lost 3-2 at Borussia Park, and I thought they gave Leverkusen such a good game that night, and they were really unfortunate to lose it. I think Wirtz scored in like the 94th minute or something to win it. And we were all saying, oh, well, it's classic Leverkusen. But there was something really impressive about that Gladbach performance. They then beat Bochum, but then they lost to Stuttgart and Frankfurt. They then beat a decent Union Berlin side, and then they lost to Augsburg, who we talked about the show, who I think are actually a pretty decent team this season. And it's actually worth bearing in mind that, in terms of actual home form, they're actually one of the top teams in the division in terms of picking up points. They've only lost 1 game at home. So in their first kind of, 6 games, they've played a good Stuttgart team, a good Leverkusen team, a good Frankfurt team, and an Augsburg side who've only lost once at home. And at that point, everyone's saying, Gladbach's season's ruined, Gerardo Seoane is about to get sacked, he's doing everything wrong. Then they finally get some games against beatable teams, i.e. Heidenheim, Mainz, Werder Bremen, RB Leipzig, who we just talked about, absolutely useless, and now St. Pauli. And they're suddenly picking up wins and they're picking up draws. And, someone was talking to me in our group chat. They were talking about Marco Rose, and they were saying it'd be interesting to see where he ranks on your power rankings, Stefan. I'm really intrigued to see how Gerardo Seoane ranks, because when I look at that fixture list and the results they've had, the games that they've lost, almost all of them are games that they would have been expected to lose, except for the Augsburg game, really. And all the games they've won are games that they'd be expected to win. Now, there's obviously like a 1-1 draw against Mainz in there, which you'd maybe say they should have won. But having said that, Mainz are looking quite decent this season. And it was away from home. And there's a draw against Leipzig, which on paper, you would say that was also away from home, so you wouldn't expect them to win that game. But kind of, if you chalk up all those results today, I think you would say Gladbach are winning the games they expect to win. They've lost the games you wouldn't expect them to win, and they're putting in decent performances against the likes of Mainz and RB Leipzig. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Kleindienst is probably the key factor in that. He's a great striker. Very few players in the Bundesliga season who can rack up the XG and things like that alongside him. I think Marvin Friedrich coming back into the team as centre-back's been outstanding. One of the key things that's worth noting in that kind of recent run of form, his last 5 games, is that Gladbach have only conceded 4 goals but scored 10. So they're definitely kind of shoring things up at the back. And yeah, it's just been really quite impressive, to be honest with you. And I think Gladbach deserve a lot of credit for sticking by Gerardo Seoane here, because it would have been really easy just to say, you lost your first 3 or 4 games out of 6 without even really putting it into context. They would have sacked him. They would have brought someone else in. It would have taken 6 to 8 months for him to find his feet, and then they're just kind of doing the same thing over and over again. And now Gladbach are in a good position. That's not to say that they're going to just suddenly start, challenging for Europe. The next games are Freiburg away, then Dortmund at home. So, and then they've got Kiel, Hoffenheim, and then after the break is Bayern Munich, Wolfsburg, and Leverkusen. So they have a lot of tough games coming up. But I think the important thing is they put together this run. They've shown that they can win games. Gerardo Seoane has shown that he can put this team together. They can when he's got a fully fit squad and everyone's kind of playing well. This team do win points and they do steer clear of relegation and they look very comfortable mid-table. And I think that's probably the extent of what Gladbach can hope for at this point with this squad and with the money they spent.
Yeah, and I mean, the stability is a big thing, right? I mean, it was only a few weeks ago that we sat here and we had, I reported that Seoane was in the hot seat and he got himself out of that, right? Yeah, I think there is a world where he loses a few games and he's gone. And now I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, considering the run of form that they have at the moment. So, and that is credit to him. That's credit to the way they've been playing. I thought that they played really well in this game too. I mean, the player miss aside, this was a perfect performance in so many ways. Yes, it was against St. Pauli, but still. And also it felt like the Borussia Park was the atmosphere there just felt a bit different too. Than it in recent seasons as well. It just seemed like it really picked up. And so that is all credit to his work lately. And I think he's earned himself now room to breathe, to give this project stability and maybe see if he can take it at one level higher. And yeah, credit to him. I mean, that's fantastic work. And I'm curious to see how it's going to keep going. I mean, off note, yeah, you mentioned it already, the Bayern Munich game in the new year, right? On match day 16. Could it be also match day 33? With a little luck, maybe we still do have an interesting Bundesliga campaign by match day 33. We all know what Gladbach's history is against Bayern Munich, so here's fingers crossed that that's going to be an interesting game.
I was going to say, that's probably one of the easier ones if we're going on Gladbach's history.
Especially if they're playing like they do right now. I mean, last year, I think, was kind of an exception. But yeah, Gladbach against Bayern has always been a ton of fun. The true Klassiker, as I always say. So maybe we'll get that back. I think that'd be fun.